Are you ready to Omar? They were going to kick out Rob Liefeld.
Oh, that is so lame.
Isn't it?
Or whether it was standing in line for Rob Liefeld.
Laser Scotty. Don't be Sheehan unless you gotta be Sheehan.
The thing is disconcerting to me, I was totally thinking that.
You should have Dennis sign it. Dead or alive, you're coming with me, Robo Scotty.
Laser Scotty.
Sometimes I can't help myself when it comes to like X-Men.
I think the people want Laser Scotty. With a rebel, yeah. Oh, man. You look like Doc Brown when he's like, where are we going, Doc? He goes, to the future.
Significantly challenging. And the light that burns twice as bright burns half as long. And you have burned so brightly, Roy.
There you go. And the Oscar goes to?
Laser Sheehan wins again for the 6th year in a row. This is getting boring. So you have a story to share.
Oh boy, is it a story. So I was in 9th grade, going into 10th.
Okay.
And I had ordered, so toward the end of the 90s, if you've ever read Batman, if all you Sheehanites have ever read Batman, and it was No Man's Land. And I just, for one of the first times, there were 2 times in my life where I had perfect timing. One was I subscribed to Batman when just as No Man's Land started. It's an epic, sprawling Batman story.
Okay.
One of the best. So I had subscribed then, and at that particular time in the late 90s, I was collecting comics, but I noticed that they would come dinged every now and then. You know, because the plastic was like the way the fabric covered calendar is like tight.
Right.
It was like loosey goosey. It was like this kind of plastic. It was like if your thing was in plastic like this, right?
Yeah, bad.
So right. So I would notice that as awesome as it was, they would come in dinged. At that particular time, for whatever reason, I don't remember being so annoyed by it. However, the other time where I had perfect timing was I started my subscription again when Hush just started and Batman and Superman just started. The first one by Loeb and McGinnis. Impeccable timing, right?
Did you know? I mean, did you have any insight or was it just totally random?
I started to subscribe around that time because I knew I wasn't in it for particularly the money. I wanted to read the story. Like I knew Jim Lee was doing a monthly for the first time since he did like his image work.
Oh, okay.
And then, you know, he had sold, obviously, as Robbie's talked about on the podcast, he sold, you know, Wildstorm to DC around that time. And the Superman Batman thing was the first time that they've ever done a Superman and Batman monthly. So I was excited for that. And Jeff Loeb, who wrote
Long Halloween, he also wrote Hush with Jim Lee, was doing it, the Batman and Superman thing. So long story short is every month, including Batman 608, which is like legendary at the time. It was like one of the hottest books in Wizard. It's still a very valuable comic at this time. Okay.
It came in the mail and it was bent and like creased. And what would have been like a $10, $20 comic at the time had all these creases in it, and it would just constantly happen. The same thing with like Batman and Superman number 1, 2, and 3.
How did you say they packaged them?
Like
Just in a loose, terrible bag.
This is more durable than what they were packed in.
Yeah. So like a super cheap polypropylene bag. Yeah.
Super. It was like your mom, blew a balloon of plastic wrap and they stuffed a comic in there, and they're like, yeah, just send it off, whatever. It's for the kids.
That's so sad. That is so sad.
It was awful. And then I called the post office. So from that time forward, the carrier would come and he would deliver it right to me, you know, because he was like one of those rural carriers that would just go to your mailbox, and, you know, he drove it out of his own car with a little light on it. And, they had no answer for me. And so, yeah, like all my comics, the Hush comics, they were all pretty much trash outside of reading them and enjoying them, which I very much did. And it was so frustrating.
That is super frustrating.
Super frustrating. Where is my pixie dust? Why are their feet like that?
This is not something that should be tempting. You would have been like, Will Shatner.
Oh, well, he's still alive.
But I was like, I want Will Shatner.
I want William Shatner.
Remember, he was like one of the big ones when we went to that cheesy
Big Apple Comic-Con like 12 years ago. William Shatner's upstairs, and everybody's like waiting for the elevator. You know, they paid their, I think it was like $35, wasn't it? You know, and how many, that was like easily 12, 15 years ago. And they're going to go up in the elevator and whatnot. And it's like, and we're digging through the boxes.
Yes. And we're,
but they're going to see Shatner.
Yep. Nerd. That's right. We're the cool nerds.
The whole nerd segregation, class distinction thing happening. I think I did get some, I got some nice Star Wars issues, as I recall, at that show.
And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And it was like, what? How much? It was beautiful, beautifully presented, but it was like thousands, like 2,000, 5,000. It's like, you know, it's like Cyndi Lauper back in 1985 saying you were cute. That's my best equivalent for you.
I'm not sure. In 1980, if she said that to me now, I would be okay with that. But if she said that to me in 1985, I would, that wouldn't have been cool then. I'd rather have Cindy do it than Madonna. You know who it might be? Annie Lennox.
All right, so Annie Lennox says, Scott, you're cute. It's 1985. And she like touches you there in this, and you're like,
the tips are frosted, as you can see.
Well done.
I did that. I do that myself. Anything with electricity.
Yeah, I think your hair's gonna blow up. Well,
you're gonna get electrocuted.
For any of you Sheehanites, it's hair wax. And by the way, organicpricebooks.com, at checkout, your coupon code is Sheehan is dead. Sheehan is dead. Hit apply. You save $2. Let them know that you like Sheehan is Dead comics here on YouTube and what we're doing. Organicpricebooks.com. Really? She goes, yeah, I'm sorry. I said, wow, you guys are cold as ice. I said,
good for you. Good for you. Really? This is what's happening right now? This is what we're going to do? Yeah. And she's like, and I said, okay, well, I'd like to reschedule. And ever since then, she's been like super nice.
It's like, I don't want the Sheehan treatment.
No. She wasn't able to kick her dog on the way out to work that morning or something, you know? So she needed to kick somebody else.
Like, I kid you not, I checked to make sure that I didn't.
I was listening to the right thing. It's the same thing as him standing on his chair at San Diego Comic-Con. Big mistake.
I wasn't starting anything. You know, guys, I got on the chair and I'm like, you guys.
I was concerned. I was frightened.
I was frightened. I'm like, you guys.
I got to get in my chair. This behavior is not acceptable.
They were going to kick out Rob Liefeld at the height of his career.
The whole con would have just shut down.
It would have shut down. That's right. Somebody corrupted it. What was it like meeting Rob Liefeld? Have you met Rob Liefeld?
I mentioned Liefeld, and all of a sudden it was almost like he went, I know, I don't listen to that. I know of it. I don't listen to it.
Skynet. It's Skynet.
Thanks for inviting me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Just let me fanboy for a sec. Like like your video is always the first one that I watch when I get home from work, and then I put you on, and it's like I watch your overview. You know, I'm trying to tell Scott, standing in line for like 2 hours for Scott Snyder or Greg Capullo. Get my book signed, or
Yeah, this year was the Peach Momoko year. Peach Momoko had like a line that was 4 hours long. Yeah, and it's crazy because you always have the convention people that show up every year, no matter what. They always have the longest line possible. Like Chris Claremont's always like that.
And I was like, man, it's Chris Claremont. Like I've heard.
Oh, yeah. So New York Comic Con has a lot of goodies that I really enjoyed them, like scavenger hunt goodies. Like I was looking for Garbage Pail Kid cards, and everybody else is standing in line already for Jim Lee or these people that you're going to have to wait in line hours for. So they might as well go ahead and get there early or some panels. And I was like on the hunt for Garbage Pail Kid cards. I didn't get them. People are interested in so many different things, whether it was like the One Piece movie or whether it was standing in line for Rob Liefeld or Jim Lee. You know what I'm saying?
People still do that?
That's on our talk schedule.
People still do that. Yeah, man. It's fandom, dude. It's crazy. I have to say, Lacer Sheehan. Dude, where are you in the future? Where are you?
to the future.
Like, or what the 80s thought the future was going to look like.
The light.
Remember in Back to the Future 2, where are we going? To the future.
The light that has burned twice as bright burns half as long.
And you burn so very light.
Your setup is so wicked, man. Like, I don't know what's going on back here.
You're looking at the farthest one away is a Roland MC 909 groove box, and then the one in front of it is an Akai MPC. I don't know how to play it. I just know how to turn them on. We're total noobs, dude.
Yeah, this is like our 6th or 7th video.
Hi, you know my name.
Hey, Scott.
Hello.
Yeah.
The guy from Different Strokes. I can't remember his name.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Right.
So and Omar, seriously, I've been telling my mom, I'm like, Mom, Omar's coming on the show. She's like, that Omar? I'm like, yeah. She's like, really? I'm like,
so
yeah.
sweet.
She was so proud. So
Oh, thank you. That is so sweet.
yeah, so there he is.
Yeah, very nice.
The real uncanny Omar.
I
Guys,
am
have a
real.
good night.
Oh,
Alrighty.
you.
Good to
Nice
see you.
meeting you.
It was nice to meet you.
I've been totally geeking out on like the early mid 90s novelty cover stuff.
Mid-90s. No, when you say novelty covers, are you talking about things like chromium covers or die?
Yeah,
covers?
I mean any of it. Die cut, lenticular poster foldouts. I mean, the reign of Superman, the Liefeld stuff, X-Men. I've just been like, oh,
so it's introduced to Unity Gold. That one there had like one of the most gimmicky covers I'd ever seen because it was actual gold that they use on the cover.
Cool.
Yeah, it was insane.
Cool. Yeah.
But I remember how much it was. Like, it was like $100 and something when we were kids.
That is a serious collection you've got behind you, man. Like, what is that?
That's like a sneeze of it.
How much more?
A lot. A lot. I have a lot more because I also get trade paperbacks. I have manga, and I have oversized hardcovers. These are mainly the Omnis and some of my favorite books down there, but I get a variety of things.
Do you listen to Rob Observations? You listen to Liefeld's podcast?
No, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't watch or listen to anything, and I haven't in the last few years. Because I don't have the time anymore, and B, like, I think subconsciously I don't want to borrow ideas from someone else, maybe, even if I don't mean to. And it's been probably a little over 2 years since the last time that I have actually watched something on YouTube or listened to a podcast. It's been quite a long time. My wife still does. My wife still watches and listens to things on YouTube.
Yeah, it's actually, he's a very good storyteller.
He's a historian. He's a good historian.
Yeah, like he talks, it's like he'll let you know that he sold the most X-Force like over and over, and full stop, he likes to say full stop.
But he does fill in a lot of the backstory, how the business works, and I really enjoy that. I think that's
yes. And he talks about like Image, how they formed Image, how he split from Image, and then he does. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but he does an absolutely spot on.
McFarlane.
Yes.
I saw the what was it? It was a good documentary. It's free.
Yeah. It's on Amazon. It's on YouTube.
It talks about, is it? I don't know about that. Brian, you've been holding out.
I sent that to you. You're probably too busy to watch it.
I can't remember what it's called. It's called
But Image. It's about the history of Image.
It's the foundation of Image.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a really good like documentary because it talks about each one of them, with the exception of like Will Spertasio, because he really wasn't there because his sister got sick. But it did talk. I mean, there is a lot of truth behind what he says, though. Like, as far as the amount of books he was selling, the lines, the overnight. I mean, he was a 20-year-old kid, and 20 years old, like, and being a millionaire overnight.
I listened to your awesome interview with Silvestri, and was it Matt Whiting or?
Hawkins, the guy that, yeah.
Really enjoyed that interview. And
thanks, man.
Like, you let Silvestri and Hawkins just go. like you served it up, they hit it, and you just sat back. And I thought that was lovely because they showed a lot of gems. And like what I really appreciated what Mark said, he's like, back then it was a huge speculative market too. Because I remember that I was like boots on the ground collecting comics, and I remember Image and Liefeld and Lee, and I wasn't into it. I was a DC guy, but I'm trying to tell Scott, like, yeah, those things were huge and whatnot, but when it all crashed, it crashed because people thought Spawn #1 or Wildcats #1 was going to put them through.
Yeah, you bought 10 copies of that stuff, put it in a vault, you're going to be a million.
Yes, there you go, my man.
It happened. It happened.
Yeah.
And then it started happening at Marvel and DC, and then eventually the whole thing just kind of imploded. Keep it real, okay? I will try.
Please.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. No, he doesn't want to do that.
I've been keeping it real since 1994.
There you go.
So, what do you think the current state of comics? Because I'm explaining to Scott my taste, and I'm not a fan right now of like all the gimmicks they're pulling off to get readers, because this is like the ADHD generation, whereas back in the day collecting comics, it was like, just give me a good story.
I have some strong opinions about this because I've worked with publishers and I understand what it's like to be in their shoes, and I know you guys have probably seen the manga is destroying the sale of comics, and there is yes, that is true. There's no denying that, but that's always been the case with manga since it started the big manga boom in the early aughts with Tokyo Pop or mixed scene before that. But it's also difficult for them to stay afloat, and that's why a lot of these manga publishers end up falling, and they just end up buying too many licenses because it's really expensive to carry a license. I mean, even people like Dark Horse have a hard time keeping a license renewed because it's so expensive. So that means the books always have to be in print. Not everybody has what I say Disney and WB money.
Sure.
Backing whether Viz or Dark Horse, they're successful, but it's not what people think when people are like, oh, it's outselling comics. Yeah, these people are not millionaires. And the manga creators themselves, like, they're dying because of the amount of stress they're under. I mean, I think of my favorite creator, Kentaro Miura, who did Berserk. Died of a young heart attack. I mean, he was just drowning in work. So it's like they are in this phase of like, okay, this is working well for manga. Let's try that with our characters. Let's have a comic where it's almost like a slice of life. And we have like everyday type of characters. There's no kind of superheroics. Because the other thing that has changed a lot, and you guys have been buying comics since the 90s, you know this for a fact, when you step into a comic store back then, it was mainly men, right? It was guys. People that lined up for those #1 issues of Image Comics, at least in the Kentucky town I grew up in, man, I didn't see a single I worked at a comic book store for about 4 years. Best job I ever had. I can tell you in one hand how many times a lady went in there asking for comics and not with a boyfriend or a husband or a kid. Now it's changed, right? Like that, the almost like, I want to say it's still mainly men, right, that read comics. I'm not really sure 100% on what the actual stats are, but there are a lot more women reading comics these days.
Sure.
So once you have that thrown into the fact that manga's outselling comics, I mean, they're very progressive in the way that they write, and a lot of trans characters. And this again is my opinion. That might be how they're testing waters. Look, we have a lot more women reading. Let's go ahead and throw these characters out. Now, that's what I think they're doing. Now, what they're really doing, I don't know. I don't work in the industry.
It's crystal ball a little bit.
What I think is happening.
Right.
To me, my golden age has always been what I read as a kid. That's the best comics. And I think that if you ask most people, the best comics they ever read, if they were comic collectors or comic readers back in the day, most of them will probably be like, oh, dude, whatever I read when I was 12 years old, best comics ever. Nothing got better than that. It doesn't matter if you grew up in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, 90s. I mean, there's a huge fan base of Ultimate, the Ultimate Universe, Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimates. I did not like that at all. But I have so many of my viewers that love that stuff. So I love that. I love that everybody has like a different best time in comics. I guess it's like movies and video games, right? Like the best movie era to a lot of people, like 80s, 70s, 60s. best video games came out in that one little time slot between 1986 to 1990. It did not get better than that. So I think nostalgia goes a long way. Yeah,
So
and then a lot of us, because I'm guilty of it too, have a hard time with changes.
Mhm.
Especially when it's like we're so protective over our characters, right? Like, oh yeah, I don't care what happens to Spider-Man, just leave my X-Men alone. But the minute they come in and try to change things up in X-Men, I'm like, wait a minute, slow down.
I
Now you're
know.
in
I
my
know.
territory. It becomes almost personal, right? Well, think about this. Like you mentioned that you got comics in the 90s, right? Like, let's say you got comics and you made it all the way to about 2008. And you're like, I'm gonna take a break from comics. You come back to comics and it's during the Marvel Now era, right? So you have a black Captain America, you have a female Thor, you have a female Wolverine, you have a female Vision, and you have Young Avengers. So to you, in that small time that you've been away from comics, you're like, I don't recognize any of these characters. Right. What's happening? But then there are people that were brought into comics because of Jane Foster Thor's run, or Laura's run on Wolverine. Like, there's a lot of viewers that I have that love that like that's their favorite. That's the only Wolverine book they've ever picked up. Stanley hated the idea of like female characters for like the female counterpart to Captain America or Thor or Spider-Man. He was like, that's a DC thing. So the thing that really broke everything was She-Hulk, because he didn't want She-Hulk. There was a TV show with Bill Bixby, right? We all grew up watching that.
I loved watching that as a kid.
I did too. That intro scared the crap out of me when I was a kid, but I still watched it. But he didn't want, I think it was NBC that was showing the show at the time, them to create She-Hulk, because that means the rights would fall to them instead of Marvel Comics. Oh. So that's why he broke his own rule of like no female characters, because he would always say that's what DC did. We don't do that. We're Marvel. We don't have kid Captain America. We don't have kid Wolverine. We don't have female Thor. We have our characters, and we have a legacy, and our sense of legacy is passing the torch on to other people. So when that happened, that kind of broke what he wanted to do. And after that, we started getting things like Spider-Woman and other characters like that.
In that late 70s era, they were dropping so many new, Micronauts, Rom, maybe Moon Knight, She-Hulk, definitely Spider-Woman, all that stuff.
You have good taste.
Well, that was, but you spoke to it. The stuff that you were reading when you were 12 is the stuff that you remember. And that was what was happening. That was the stuff at that point that was, and then of course, Chris Claremont and John Byrne with the X-Men. And that was really, I was all about that. That was really the only, in Star Wars, those are the only two things I really cared about, but I was buying this other stuff just because, well, number one issues, whatever. Might as well try them out. I kind of dug Rom. I definitely dug Micronauts. Shogun Warriors. Yes.
Yeah,
that came out. Godzilla #1 was in that same zone too.
Yeah. And that's another one that's still in like license hell, because not sure what's going to end up with Godzilla. But anyway, Brian, I'm sorry. I hope that answered your question.
No, it did. I appreciated that. And Uncanny Omar spoke real pretty. So I got you on that. I told Scott that I feel like currently comics have shown me the door. Right now, I'm not drawn to anything currently. So a lot of the stuff is when you announce like a new, I've never been a Marvel guy. And the very first video I ever saw of yours was, I'm like, who's this Spanish dude in the suit sitting in front of like books, and like, what is this? And you were like so into it. And the suit totally drew me in. I'm like, that's interesting. I was looking for the Ultimate Spider-Man omnibus, and it was sold out. And so you announced it. You were like, yeah, coming this whenever it was, this book, I'm really excited. You dropped it, and I'm like, oh wow, I can actually own that now without paying like $300 online.
And then we got a volume 2 coming.
Yeah, and I pre-ordered that too at Organic Price Books. But do you feel currently that comics have shown you the door in any way outside of manga? Like, put manga to the side.
No, not really, because I think it's one of those things that I've just learned to accept, that as much as I don't like or can fight retcons, I mean, they're bound to happen. And You just have to keep moving forward with the characters that you enjoyed. Like, I really enjoy Tom Taylor's Nightwing. I think that's one of the best books that has been coming out in the last year.
Very, very good. Very good.
And I don't think it's been that good since Chuck Dixon's era. I love Chuck Dixon wrote The Perfect Nightwing.
Chuck Dixon is I grew up on Chuck
I
Dixon.
think we all did in the 90s, right? He was everywhere.
Yeah.
Like in
He's
Punisher,
like
Batman, Batgirl. Oh, he did year one, but Robin, Nightwing, he was everywhere.
Yes, he was my Robin writer, and I've got all 5 of the trades, the trade paperbacks, Robin's Return, and all that. So
it was Judd Winnick writing it, and it's really interesting. Around that time, Marvel and Ed Brubaker were also doing the Winter Soldier.
Bucky,
and DC was doing Red Hood, and neither one of them knew about each other. But as a comic book reader of both, you're like, surely somebody had to share something with somebody. This just doesn't happen.
That's pretty cool. That sounds pretty cool. Interesting.
I actually really enjoyed the Red Hood story arc. I thought it was awesome. Like, Judd Winnick killed it. And as much as that's another one. Like, okay, so I was like a fan. I called that 900 number. I paid 75 cents in 1989. And I got in trouble because my parents did not know that I paid 75 cents.
I remember you mentioned that on one of your overviews. But all I saw was the book, but I heard the giggle in your voice. And tell me.
So I was like, you do not get to take that from me, Judd Winnick. I swallowed my words. It was awesome. I love the return. I love how he did it. There's even an amazing page in there by Jim Aparo, which was the alternate take on the death of Robin if Robin had lived. It's got Batman holding him, and he's like, he's alive. Oh, it was an annual 25 of Batman. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, so I really enjoyed that. So yeah, that wasn't until Brian's right, like around 2005 is when that particular storyline started, right after Hush.
Right.
Yeah, when he digs, and like there was that. I think it's still pretty pricey, like CGC, the one where the Matt Wagner cover where Batman's like on his knee at the grave.
Yeah.
And
I like how those two covers go hand in hand too. You got one like that's holding the helmet, and then Batman's reaction.
Yes.
So back in 1988, DC had a summit. People do not like the new Robin. So after Dick Grayson graduated and went over to Teen Titans, Batman needed another Robin, and it was Jason Todd. And he was kind of a jerk, and nobody really liked him. But what happened was we had a Crisis on Infinite Earths that changed things. DC was like, well, let's kill him off, and they decided to do something even more interesting. Is like let's let the audience decide if he needs to live or die. So you had a 900 number to call,
vote
whether he dies or whether he lives, and you paid 75 cents because it was a 900 number. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Know what that is.
That's kind of cool though. That's kind of a fun thing.
Very cool, cool, and very gimmicky. I like that. They were trying different things. And I mean, if they hadn't done that, we wouldn't have gotten the greatest Robin ever, which is Tim Drake. I love Tim Drake.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm not a fan of what they've done to him recently, but I am a huge Tim Drake was my Robin.
The editorial couldn't even figure out okay, what are we gonna do with this character?
Right. The guy was a cornerstone.
It was like, are we gonna keep him as one of the original Robins, or had he always been just Red Robin and he had never been a Robin? And I'm like, oh man, you gotta. You can't just write stories before making your mind up. You have to make sure you have a map, a plan.
Yeah, there's no more long form storytelling that sets up a massive event. It's kind of like, let's hit it in 3 issues, 6 issues, we're out. I started to watch the rest of your catalog, your back catalog.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, I have now I am swimming in the omnibus swamp, in the deep part of the omnibus ocean.
I'm so sorry.
A huge percentage of the books on his shelf, from what I've seen, I would almost say he's got more Marvel than he does DC.
What happened, Brian?
Right. I have all these juicy Marvel stories that you fanboyed out over, and I'm all excited for, but I just haven't read them yet. And I'm I don't even know what order to read these.
That's why I started doing reading orders. That's what a lot of people found on my channel.
I love it.
Because I wanted to do something that I would have benefited from, when I first got into collected editions in 2004. For years, I had it in my head. And then somebody's like, do you ever write this stuff down? That's when I started doing it on Patreon. I'm like, well, I guess I could write it down. So that's why I love doing those. And a lot of people have benefited from the reading orders. Every year I give everybody a chance to vote on their most wanted. It's a different beast.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Like talking to them and their departments, it's just night and day. Night and day. I am, and not throwing any shade because I love their stories and I wish they could do more. And I wish that they could print more.
When you announced the absolute 3 Jokers, and I went, oh, I said it to Scott, I'm like, look at this,
I was very happy about that. I'm a big fan of Jeff Johns. He was my Claremont, like for DC. Like he got me into a lot of DC books that I normally would not have read, like JSA.
So again, Omar, you're responsible for that, dude. I ordered all 3 volumes of the JSA Omnibus. So yeah, like now my curiosity, I was like, oh man, Omar mentioned the JSA, so I went and bought them off, organic price book.
Yeah, volume 2 sold out quick, which is crazy.
It did, right?
One of the most anticipated books of the last 2 years.
Yes,
it was gone.
I told Scott, it's like if Jim Lee and Gary Frank's pencils had a baby, that's Jason Favic's art to me.
It is really good, but then you get attached, right?
Yeah, right. That's exactly what happened. Like when Jim Lee left the book, Ivan Reyes took over the book, and I fell in love with that guy. And at first, I was like, "Who is this poor man's David Finch?" And I fell in love with his art. Like in his second issue, I was like, "Okay, this guy, he's awesome." Like he draws some amazing dramatic fight sequences and. All his dudes are super beef, like 90s super beefy. But
it's like
they're not beefcakes, but they're
right.
Very muscular,
they're not
very muscular dudes.
Hey, come on now, Cable's cool, right?
Cable is awesome. I love Cable.
He grew like between New Mutants Annual, I think number 8, which was like the first one that he inked or drew and inked. Go from there to Avengers 1, and it's like, whoa. So much growth happened between those books. I'm not a big early Liefeld fan, but his, the later stuff is, it's good. It's not, it's not Jim Lee, but it's still good. There was a lot of growth in what he did.
Coming back as an adult, people hating on him, I thought it was really odd.
If you want to bring me food, don't bring me any food. I know what people do to their food. There's some real weirdos out there. I will not eat it. If you want to bring me flowers, if you want to do this, that's fine.
When I'm doing overviews of books, I try to stay middle ground because some of these stories mean the world to someone else. And some of these stories are somebody's first comics or even saved them out of a state of depression. So I respect that. And I try to look at it through their eyes. And then sometimes I can't help myself when it comes to like X-Men.
But it's awesome. It's not like, oh, here he goes again on X-Men. It's like, yeah, Omar, tell me.
Yeah, thank you. I do try to stay middle ground. And sometimes it's a lot harder than it should be.
It's not the uncanny Omar. It's the unphony Omar.
It's the unphony Omar. I was telling Scott what Mark Waid said to you. You're the luckiest man in comics.
I will never forget that. I lost my job in 2020. It was horrible. And then this is what I decided to turn around and do. 20 years in IT, and then I'm doing this, which is insane and totally loving it. I'm a one-man show, right? I don't have a producer. I don't have anybody editing my videos. I do it all. Son of a gun. I forgot to plug the microphone back into the camera. There's no sound. And I'm the one that tests out everything. Like I clap. I'm like, okay, sounds good. Oh my gosh. My dog was just looking at me. Dude. And then I come right back down here and film again for another hour. I like to keep people entertained, to keep people watching and informed.
And therein is the difference between just like it being a hobby and the job.
Right.
And that was the job right there. And
yeah.
Like, okay.
Hobby would have been like, come back.
Suck it up and just do it again. There's a lot of benefits. And there's some loss, there's some fails there, but you just roll with it.
I love it. Going back and reminding me what Mark Waid said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally worth it. Like outside of getting married to Melanie and having 2 wonderful, beautiful kids.
The astonishing Melody.
Yes, that's my wife. The astonishing Melody. I'm sorry.
Omar, ready? Japan.
Yes. I never got flown to Japan. All I got flown to was Canada and rough parts of Mexico.
I must tell you, I enjoy when you bemoan the U.S. Postal Service about your books.
People are hard on the Postal Service, and I'm like, dude, like things are gonna happen. Everything is slowing down. You can't like blame the postal service because your omnis are coming late. Just be happy it's not medication that you need.
I appreciate when you bemoan the post office.
And sometimes I feel like I don't achieve that to make someone's day a little bit better. So hearing that really brightens my day because it's my pleasure, Brian. Like I love doing this, and I've been very blessed and very lucky into doing this. So it's my pleasure. It's the least I can do to pay it back. Thank you both. This has been a pleasure to be on here and talk about these things. And
yeah, we'll let you go. We'll let you. Super appreciate you being with us.
It is my pleasure.
Dude, thank you so much.
Scott, look at Scott. Scott's born for this, dude.
I told you.
He's got a good voice.
I went to Amazon and I read reviews and
oh, okay, you did what I did. Okay, guys. I just thought you knew because you were like working on those things that you're restoring.
No.
Well, Omar, again, greatly appreciated. Thank you for making time for us. And you're more of a sweetheart in person than you are on camera, my friend. Thank you.
I'll take that as a compliment. You all be good. Thank you, guys.
All right, buddy,
thank you. That was funny that we said nothing about Rob, and then he like opened it right up.
He was like, bam, and yeah, Rob Liefeld. And I was like,
that was perfect. Well, then we should be able to get John Byrne on next then.
Oh yeah, as long as he doesn't hate us.
No, he doesn't hate us because he knows that we understand why he doesn't like Robbie.
Better days, better days in the Bat Cave.
Is Claremont a curmudgeon or what? Or what?
He's definitely. There's an expectation you can tell when you talk to him that you better know what you're talking about, or else he's gonna just like take a huge dump on you.
I'm not gonna suffer fools.
Correct. Thank you. Perfect. And it's not like a nose in the air. It's like if you're gonna come to me, come like.
Don't waste my time.
Yeah, you don't come with pea shooters. Like, so tell me about yourself, or what do you think? Why did you write that line in X-Men? Like, you gotta be like,
yeah. Chris with a K, Claremont with a C.